Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Podcast, brought to you by Ceres. I'm Paul Ellis, your host for these programs about developments in this fast-growing industry. My guest today is Luma Saqqaf, Executive Chairman of Ajyal Sustainability Consulting. Saqqaf has spent 3 decades at the forefront of Islamic finance, sustainability, and entrepreneurship in the Middle East and North Africa, also known as the MENA region, as well as in Europe. And she is a regular advisor to the Dubai financial market. In today's program, we discuss the impacts of climate change on the MENA region and the sustainable finance trends that are developing there. But before we start, I want to say a few words about our sponsor. I'm thrilled to talk about the important work Ceres is doing. Ceres is a nonprofit organization working with the most influential capital market leaders to solve the world's greatest sustainability challenges through their powerful networks and global collaborations of investors, companies, and nonprofits. Ceres drives action and inspires equitable, market-based, and policy solutions throughout the economy. To learn more, go to ceres.org/podcast. That's CERES.org/podcast. At Ceres, sustainability is the bottom line. Hello, Luma, and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Podcast.
Hi, Paul, and thank you very much for having me.
So, Luma, we are on the eve of the COP27 summit. What is the current status of sustainability and climate change in the MENA countries? And if you would, please tell our listeners where the COP27 summit will take place.
Sure. So, let's start with that. COP27 is going to be in Egypt, so the north of Africa. Mm-hmm. But also, perhaps it's worth just painting a picture of MENA.
Yes.
For this question, MENA straddles two continents, Africa and Asia. It's 472 million people, more or less. So quite big and comparable to Europe. But of course, Europe is more homogeneous than MENA. MENA has, on the one hand, some of the most or least developed countries, but also, and so there's a lot of poverty, but there's also quite rich countries in MENA. So you have, MENA is home to producers of 1/3 of the global oil production, but also 1/5 of the global gas reserves. So you can see the contrast. You have 14 of the world's most water-stressed countries in MENA, and against oil producers. So it's really a very, very interesting, paradoxical, if you like, area. The problems in MENA from a climate perspective, and when we're talking about the current status, you have extreme heat, you have droughts, water stress, water scarcity, food security issues, rising sea levels, and also you have issues like oil exporting countries needing to decarbonize. So in so many ways, there's no shortage of climate issues in MENA. But also it represents in so many ways the whole world. So Europe seems to have, for example, relatively similar types of problems. MENA has all types of problems, and with that in mind, when you look again at climate, you will see that all of MENA region have already submitted their NDCs. They have committed to a number of things, but the things that they have committed to also probably reflect all of those issues that we've discussed, these different points of view for all of those countries. So we have from net zero in the United Arab Emirates committing to net zero by 2050, but then you have Saudi, for example, and Bahrain committing to net zero by 2060. Then you have other countries who can't commit to net zero. They can only commit to decreasing emissions. So you have, for example, Qatar committing to 25% reduction by 2030. Then you have countries like Jordan and Egypt who are considered the poorer countries. And so their commitments require a significant amount of contributions. So Jordan needs something like $6 billion to reduce around 26%. Egypt requires $246 billion to reduce emissions in 3 sectors. So it's so diverse, but also it reflects, as I say, the different needs of every country. But the one big issue that we have today on the eve of COP27 is the financing needs for the MENA region. And again, it's a reflection of the whole world. We are talking about $600 billion for only MENA to achieve their NDCs. And if you add the SDGs as a whole, you're then talking about something to the tune of $2 trillion. So we're talking about huge amounts. Now, of course, there's some developed world financing committed, but then we have all sorts of problems of, is it enough? It's not only for MENA. Is it in the form of grant, loans, etc.? What kind of financing it's going to cover, mitigation, adaptation? And so if we want to summarize all these problems today with MENA, we could say that MENA reflects the status of the world today in the face of climate change, in the face of all of these issues. It's grappling with the amount of financing now that they have made their commitments. They're grappling with the amounts of money that is needed. They are grappling with the volume of work that is needed to achieve all of these goals, the laws that need to be enacted, all the policies and strategies that need to be put in place to improve the financial sector so that all of these financings can actually happen. And on top of everything, we need to involve the private sector. And in what ways?
You know, Luma, if I can interrupt for a second, this sounds very much like what we are going through in the United States of America right now and what is happening in Europe and China and, as you said, every place else in the world. We are all struggling with these massive commitments that we need to make to transition our global economy away from oil and gas requirements for energy purposes over the next 20 or 30 years. So how important are the COP27 and COP28 summits going to be, not just for the MENA countries, but for the entire planet in terms of what gets accomplished at those summits over the next 2 years? And if you would, let our listeners know where COP28 will be taking place as well.
Sure. So again, another interesting thing that's happening is that COP27 and COP28, the two, one after the other, is happening in MENA, and COP28 is happening in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, and that in itself actually again puts interesting perspectives on what we're hoping or the importance of how the MENA region is going to take these COPs. I think from a global perspective, and of course, COP is for everybody, it's not for the hosting countries only. However, the hosting countries do kind of influence, if you like, some of the discussions based on their perspectives. So we talked about Egypt, developing country, per capita, $3,800 per annum. So really very, very poor country. And we know that they require all this $246 billion by 2030, just Egypt. So their focus, and they have already announced it, is going to be on sources of funding. So that is going to be one of the hottest topics, I would say, in MENA, in COP27. And engaging with the developed world. It's also going to be, I think, about engaging the private sector. Nobody can come up with these amounts in this space of time. impossible. So the private sector needs to be involved, and I think that's the focus. For COP28, which is the UAE, we're talking about an oil-producing country. We're talking about a richer country, per capita $36,000, and 3% of the world gas reserves. I think the focus of the UAE is going to be on emissions, on reducing emissions. They've already committed to net zero by 2050, and they are already trying to be a leader in sustainability, in leading MENA, and to take a bigger global role in leadership. So they are going to try and show the world, I guess, what they have been doing already in that to achieve that goal. A lot of things have already happened around that. So again, it's going to be focused on improving targets, innovation, and so on. From a pure MENA perspective, what are the COPs for MENA within the region? I think the importance is going to be to bring about the importance of the private sector and the need for them to think in two ways. The first one is that they are also parties to the reduction. The commitments that the governments make are not for the government to implement, are for everybody to implement. We all need to work together. So that's one level. And the second level, I'm hoping that there will be an understanding that this is also an opportunity. When we talk about this amount of money, $2 trillion between now and 2030, that is an opportunity for the private sector to do something, hopefully. And the hope is that there will be also 1 million jobs created, which MENA desperately needs. So we're hoping that these are the kind of things that will take the importance and take the attention of people in COP27 and COP28.
Yes, the recently passed, just this past week, in fact, Tax Relief Act through the U.S. Congress is allocating over $400 billion of assets going forward to address these same issues here in the United States. And so it's obviously certainly not just a regional problem anywhere to raise that kind of money, and especially when we have so much need, not just everywhere, but in the global South. As well, because many of the countries, as you know, in the global South, are not even participating in the type of economic infrastructure that is available, for example, to at least some of the MENA countries, and that's a very difficult area to focus on, right? So we need much more coordination, much more collaboration around that.
Totally. And I think one thing to say here is that I think an important thing to keep in mind is that literally the whole world is suffering from the same problems.
Yes. But
also the whole world needs all these trillions of dollars within the same period of time. And so we are all kind of competing for the same money and for the same attention. And that has got to be something very important to keep in mind with all of these discussions.
Good. Well, thank you very much for bringing that up. You're absolutely right. And tell us, from your perspective, what sustainable finance trends are developing in MENA countries in 2022 and beyond?
In terms of there are a couple of levels, if you like, to talk about.
Please.
There is the regulatory issues and generally capital markets development. And on that, I have to say that there's very little happening, whether we like it or not. It's a reality. There has been some movements from the stock exchanges on putting together, for example, laws requiring mandatory disclosure. But even that, it's only in a few countries, UAE and Egypt. Qatar is talking about that. But apart from that, from the regulatory side, there is very little. What has been more active, I would say, is the actual products that are taking place in the market. So there are more products like loans, bonds, and so on. We've seen a lot of issuances and a lot of borrowings in the past couple of years, specifically sovereign, real estate, aviation, different sectors and different borrowers. But I think the most important ones have been the sovereign, Egypt one of them, and all the financial institutions, because obviously with financial institutions, by definition, it means it is going for even more green projects. And that has been good. In terms of other trends, as I said, loans, bonds, we have seen a lot of sukuk, especially in the GCC, Sharia-compliant bonds taking place. And we are starting to see also some retail products, for example, HSBC offering green home mortgages. We're seeing some banks, Standard Chartered, mobilizing $300 billion for MENA and Asia. For SMEs. We've seen interesting developments like the European Reconstruction and Development Bank, for example, coordinating with Jordan, lending to banks for on-lending to small businesses for green and climate. But I would say, generally speaking, that's really the gist of what we're seeing at this stage in terms of movement on the smaller finance, sustainable finance sphere.
Okay. Well, I have conversations with a number of U.S. asset management companies on a regular basis that believe the Middle East is a natural home for sustainable finance because of Islamic finance and the way it is structured. So you mentioned Sharia compliance and Sukuk bond issuance. A number of asset managers here in the U.S. that I know and work with believe that is a reason to be developing more business for their firms in the MENA countries. Is that true? And if it is, can you explain that to our listeners?
Sure. Look, I think just stepping back for 1 second, I mean, MENA has conventional and Islamic finance. So both are prevalent in MENA, and Islamic finance is just one type of financing. But for obvious reasons, it's more important, let's say, in MENA. Yes, Islamic finance is a segment of ethical financing, values-based investments, basically investments that are looking for more than just monetary returns. We are looking for a specific way of being, and that is reflected in the way we invest. And so, I mean, people are more aware, if you like, of the more typical, what we call negative screening lists of Sharia. So you don't invest in things like weapons, pornography, alcohol. So, but the list that is typical for Sharia is not that uncommon in sustainable financing. It is relatively similar. But also, it's not just that list, that typical list. Sharia as a religion also it's embedded in it concepts like long-term good of humanity, eradicating poverty, hunger. All those concepts are within the core tenets of Sharia. So it is definitely considered within the sustainable finance. And so I would say that the region, MENA, is primed for sustainable finance because of that. Now, just one thing to add about that is that when you add sustainable finance to a Sharia compliant structure or vice versa, you're actually gaining also a little bit more. So from an Islamic finance perspective, when you are structuring financing, the money is transferred by a Sharia compliant way, but then the debtor can use the money in any form it wishes, provided it stays away from that, what we call the negative list. In sustainable finance, in addition to that, you are actively being required to do something sustainable with the money. So in a way, you can look at Sharia compliance as a negative screening, and then with sustainability, it's a negative screening plus. So you're adding something. But also in both types of financing, the underlying credit of the debtor, of the obligor, is the same credit risk as in a normal bond. It doesn't matter that it is Sharia structured or it has a sustainable finance component. And that's why if you look at the MENA region, actually, if you look at the GCC specifically, according to Fitch, 80% of sustainable bonds that have been issued in the last couple of years have been on Sharia. So they were sustainable Islamic bonds. For that reason, because you're able then to attract all types of investors, ethical, so Sharia compliance and sustainable, but also normal investors who are looking for this type of credit because nothing really changes in the underlying credit.
That's fascinating, and I would like to continue our conversation about this in the future. But for the moment, in today's program, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I want to ask you about being the founder and the creative director of the ethical luxury women's wear brand by Luma. Can you give us a couple of examples of women's wear you design and tell us why you decided to launch a fashion business?
So by Luma was established in 2017. It's a result of a personal need, if you like, of not just me as a professional woman, but a lot of women in this category who did not find the appropriate wear for professional women generally. It's really a difficult category to find in the market. But obviously, because of the way I think, because of the way I would like to do things, it had to be an ethical brand, basically. And so our focus is very much on what we use in terms of materials. We use natural fabrics inside and outside, which is really important. We also are very conscious of our carbon footprint. So we source from, we produce in Spain and we source from nearby Italy as a close source, but we also produce in small family-owned atelier in Spain. We know the people who produce for us. We know them by face and name. We've developed very good relationships with the community. Our team is 100% women. We have all sorts of flexible working environment as possible. Some work completely from home. Some work part-time, some work, different shifts. And, we've enabled many amazing women to do something hopefully amazing. And today we sell in Europe and in the Middle East. And I'm really proud of what we have been able to achieve so far.
Well, congratulations. I think that's a wonderful way to diversify yourself as an investor and a creator of business opportunities for yourself. So please, keep doing that, and I hope it's very, very successful. Now, Luma, if you would tell our listeners how they can contact you about the topics and the trends that we've discussed in today's program online, I would appreciate it.
Sure. The website, the easiest way is the website. It's ajyalconsulting.com. There's an ability to contact me via the website. That's the easiest way, I guess.
Okay. Well, thanks again to Luma Saqqaf, Executive Chairman of Ajyal Sustainability Consultant, and to our sponsor, the Ceres Accelerator for Sustainable Capital Markets. The Ceres Accelerator is a center of excellence within Ceres that aims to transform the practices and policies that govern capital markets to reduce the worst financial impacts of the climate crisis. For more information, go to ceres.org/accelerator. And to our listeners, join us again next week for another episode. I'm Paul Ellis, and this is the Sustainable Finance Podcast.